Speaking of the beast system, beast system.
And the story that comes from Bloomberg, and the headline is Elon Musk's brain implant company is inching toward human trials. It's just more of an update. He did say that he thought 2022 was the year human trials would begin. And it says here, Elon Musk's brain implant company Neuralink is now hiring a clinical trial director, an indication that the company's longstanding goal of implanting chips in human brains is coming closer. Just going to read the highlights here. The job description for the position based in Fremont, California, promises that the application will, quote, work closely with the applicant will work closely with some of the most innovative doctors and top engineers, as well as with Neuralink's first clinical trial participants. So there you go. I mean, they're literally saying, like, we're looking for the guy that's going to help us do the first clinical trial.
Wow.
It also indicates that the job will mean leading and building, quote, the team responsible for enabling Neuralink's clinical research activities, as well as adhering to regulations. You know, if a false prophet were ever to take up a job offer, this would be a good one.
Yeah, the head wound.
The head wound, yeah. The first inhuman test that medical device makers must go through on the path to U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval is known as a feasibility test. The next, after a submission, review, and approval process with the FDA based on the feasibility test, is a pivotal device test. It isn't clear precisely where Neuralink is in the process. Representatives from Neuralink and the FDA didn't respond to requests for comment. Generally, device makers hire trial directors early in the interaction with the FDA to help design trials in a way that would maximize the chances of FDA approval. Neuralink doesn't appear to have human trials posted on clinicaltrials.gov, but posting there can lag recruitment of the first patients. And then they mentioned Synchron, who's currently in the recruiting stage, and they've actually got FDA approval for its feasibility study. The Neuralink is also advertising for a Fremont-based clinical trial coordinator, as well as several other positions. So it looks like they're preparing for the rubber to really meet the road here in terms of human trials. And, this is one of those topics where, for whatever reason, with the vehicle of Neuralink, when I say vehicle, I mean like, narrative wise, because there's been a lot of brain implant trials and different kind of studies and all that, but Neuralink seems to be the one everyone's interested in. And it's like, it feels like there's no going back once you start going in this direction. And the divide that we're seeing now between the jabbed and the unjabbed and everything else, that conversation of how medicine, a medical treatment is perceived by the population, will continue to splinter off as these technologies become more available. And I would say most people will go with it because most people do, I mean, in certain ways, if the technology gets trendy and it doesn't really appear to hurt you in any way, mass populations will pick it up on it. You got tobacco industry.
Yeah,
you can look at alcohol, is similar type of thing. So
a big part of what you're talking about is how do the clinical trials go, and then how do they get reported? Because you take a look at any recent clinical trials that seemed to kind of happen faster than usual, but had the full force of the mainstream corporate media and governments and behind it. The science didn't really matter. The data didn't really matter. But you get enough, cultural force behind it, and things can be great. Doesn't matter if the first brain implant guy goes completely nuts or dies or whatever, or any number of them.
There will be complications.
We know now that it doesn't matter how the trials go if you have the correct forces behind your device or your medical whatever. to go through. And yeah, we've already seen how governments can come so close to forcing a medical procedure on everybody for the good of the common good, whatever. And you could see it happening in a different way. Probably not this year, probably not in the next 5 or 10 years, but perhaps in 2030, when other things are coalescing into some predicted and planned agenda. We see now that governments can go a long way to forcing some sort of medical procedure on somebody if they want to participate in society. And what a great opportunity for Elon Musk or other, chip implant creators to make a case that, having a chip implanted in your brain is a human right. And those who don't have the chip implanted are a danger to society.
Well, yeah, yes. But also, bringing the parallel even more closer together, if we're looking at the pattern of what we just experienced with this pandemic and the lockdowns and the FDA emergency use authorization and the military involvement in the developing of the technology for decades, and then a crisis that allows for mass distribution. If we deconstruct that with Neuralink, what crisis could we be in where the FDA is like, emergency use authorization of Neuralink, like everyone has to get hooked up? That, it sounds really dystopian, science fiction, whatever, but that's kind of what the mark of the beast prophesies.
Complications from COVID vaccines.
Well, not even. Think
that's
about
what
this.
I'm saying. Long-term complications from COVID vaccines.
It doesn't even. Yeah,
if you don't get the chip, then your what do they call it? The graphite is going to hurt other people.
Right. Well, remember a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago,
graphene.
We had that story about how dementia is going to like triple by 2050 or something like that. If dementia becomes
a public health crisis,
a global health crisis, then the FDA can step in and say, we need to get in front of it. Everybody Neuralink up, or this wave of dementia.
You become a burden on the state.
Yeah.
If you don't get the chip and you get the dementia, you're a burden on the state. You're taking up hospital beds for other people who are smart enough and kind enough to get chipped. So if you're not chipped, then sorry, you can't participate.
Yep. Good thing Jesus comes back, because if he doesn't, all flesh would be destroyed, it says there in Matthew 24. And I believe it, with us being at the stage of human history where billionaires are preparing to put little microchips in our brains.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a good time. And with that,